Alors, bonsoir tout le monde.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Standing Committee on Strategies and Public Policies. This is not a decision-making meeting. What we do is we meet with different associations and organizations to get a sense of what their situation is. So it allows us to hear what they have to say and to see if we can take corrective measures if necessary. So our first presentation this evening is Tennis Dieppe with Miguel Lévesque and Diana Yanku. I didn't want to mess up your name, so I thought I'd just leave it. The interpreter cannot hear the sound. So we're going to go through a few important items about the club. We'll be talking about the vision and the mission, which were updated this year under the new board. And then we'll be talking a little bit about our challenges and our successes in 2023. And then we'll be looking at the objectives as well that we have for 2024. So first of all, let's start by introducing ourselves. Hello, everyone. My name is Miguel Lévesque. I'm the chair of the board this year, and I'm the former club director for the last 2 years, and I'm also an instructor. And I'm Diana Yanku. I'm the new secretary on the board this year. So let's take a look at our mission. It's pretty simple. Our mission is to develop an interest in the sport. We want to offer quality services, a welcoming and dynamic setting so that anybody who wants to come out and play tennis will have fun doing so. To do that, and as I said initially, and that we've updated this year, is to promote the game of tennis by offering quality facilities, instructional programs for all, and engaging community events. And that was a bit of one of our weaknesses last year. We hope to be able to do more activities and organize more events this year, but we'll be talking about that later. And then we added that we are committed to encouraging participation, inclusion, and fair play while fostering a culture of fun. You know, at the end of the day, it's a community club. People come here to play tennis and to have fun. So we thought it was important to mention that in our mission. So let's take a look at our achievements for the past year. I think our big achievements this year were our courses for young people. Last year, I was the only instructor, so it was difficult to have larger groups. So we found we got a second instructor, and that allowed us to get more people into our courses and to offer an age category for the first time. We were able to add a fourth session as well in September. So we had 150 registrations last year, and it was in the 80s the year before. So we hope that will continue. Well, because of the success that we had with the courses, there's a direct correlation with the number of members. We saw an increase in 25% in our members compared to 2022. And we see this as a trend over the next 2 years. So in 2000, you know, there seems to be an increase every year. So that's a big advantage for us. Our third success is our success in tournaments. So we were invited to play at team tennis in Riverview. We had to create teams of 2 to 3 people. And because we had so many young people interested, we had 2 teams, and we finished in first place and in second place. And so that was a bonus for us, and for young people, we were very happy for them. And our young person, one of our young members, Sophia, took all of our courses. She took private courses. She went to the provincial championships, and she finished first in U10 and second place in U12. And we have a photo of Sophie at the end. Another success was the improvement of our space. We had a new patio built, and that improves the look of the club. That's the first thing that you see when you come here. You see the club. So that, you know, we have something new, and that helps us. That might help us to draw more people, and it improves the quality of the club overall. All right, now what are our challenges? I don't think this is a surprise. You know, this comes back every year. Our members, either our members are complain or members of the public complain, but there's a lack of washroom facilities. We have 2 porta potties, and that works, but you know, when we want to host tournaments, it gets difficult. People don't necessarily like to use porta potties. So I think that's probably our biggest challenge. And then our second challenge that Diana will be talking about. So I'll let her talk about that. Well, I just wanted to mention that, you know, in terms of washrooms, we know that this is more difficult to do and that it won't be done overnight. But one of our long-term objectives, something that we'd eventually like to have, but we understand that it's complicated to add another room to the clubhouse that's there already. But so our other challenge, and it's linked to the club closures. And I think last year, I'm sure you remember that, but we had lots of year compared to previous years, lots of rain, sorry, compared to previous years. But we had to close down our club a number of times and more often than before. And now we currently close at 9 p.m. and we might like to close, we would like to push that back to 10 p.m. We find that we're maybe not using our resources to their full potential. And one of the reasons for us closing earlier is because a lot of our staff are young people. They might be university students. So we're trying to juggle all of that. It's not a huge challenge. So what are our objectives for this year? Now you can see this on the screen that we've already changed our logo. We wanted to modernize it a bit. And we think that we thought that our logo, we wanted to keep it original. We wanted to keep the name Tennis Dieppe as well. We wanted to keep the same colors and keep the tennis ball, but we're very pleased with this new logo. And we're also working on a website now. We want we want a site that is more fluid, that will be attractive to people, that will contain all the information that people want on our club. So the theme is modernization. All right, well, kind of linked to that, we also want to boost our presence on social networks. We've been working with emails for the most part, and that's okay. We can communicate with members like that. But if we want to go get new members, we've arrived at the conclusion that we have to boost our presence on social networks. People live on social networks, so it's an important thing to do. And one of our co-directors this year, core board members, has a lot of knowledge in marketing and Instagram and social media. So she's going to be helping us with that. Third goal, we want to improve the clubhouse itself. So we want to invest in a television so that when people come in, they might be able to see a tennis game playing. We want to be able to have advertisement from our sponsors. We also want to get air conditioning as well, because in the summer it can get very hot. So when people come in, we don't want them to think that they're in a sauna. So we think that'll be a good touch. As I mentioned earlier, one of our big achievements was our courses for young people. So we want to continue in that vein. Last year, our courses started with the 4 to 5-year-olds, and they were a little bit too, from what I understand, they were a little bit too young. So we want to start at age 6, and I think we ended with age 12 last year, so we want to extend that to 17 years this year. But we hope that our tennis courses will be as successful as the previous year. To continue in the same vein, we want to offer more courses for adults. So when people buy their memberships, or there will be a rebate for courses for adults, and 16-year-olds at 16 and above will be able to enroll in adult courses. Serge Brideau, a certified instructor, will be teaching those courses, and we're very happy with that. Now, another more general objective that we have is to maintain the growing trend of our members. So with the courses that were so successful last year, that brought families, so parents, that were dropping their young people off last year. Well, they saw what happened, and now they're getting more interested. They're becoming more interested in the courses. So we want to maintain that trend. And one of our new members on our board who was a previous employee of the club about 15 years ago, told us that there were, in the past, there was 300 members. So we want to get back to that number. Another thing that we want to do is to create a league. I tried to create one a few years ago. We didn't do enough promotion. We only had 2 people sign up for it. So this summer, we're hoping to be able to play a league so people can play in their own caliber, whether it's mixed teams or children to children, people at the same level. And that's how we think we're going to get more people interested in the sport as well. And then finally, similar to the previous point, we want to plan more community events. So we thought of maybe organizing a Discover Tennis Day where it would be free and we would be promoting the sport. And so people who are maybe somewhat interested but have never wanted to come out and try for themselves, they could come that day and have access to the courts and play. So doing more barbecues, more community events. That was our last objective. All right, that's the end of our presentation. So on this program, you can see the girl to the right is Sophia, and she won the provincial championship. So thank you for listening to us. Thank you for the invitation. And are there any questions from members of the council? Councillor Jeannet. Very interesting presentation. Thank you for the great new logo. So it looks good. So for listeners, how can they get in contact with you? If people want to join the tennis club, what do they do? Well, once our website is up and running, all of our contact information will be there. We also have a Facebook page. We have Instagram, Tennis Dieppe as well. So people can go there and they can see our contact information, our email, our phone numbers, and so forth. No, you said that there was an increase, a 25% increase in the number of members. How many members are there right now? Well, last year, if I'm not mistaken, we were around 130, 140, and the previous year we were at 100. So it was a good increase. Okay, great. Well, I hope that with the social media presence that your popularity will grow and people will come and participate in your activities. How many instructors are you? I didn't understand that. Well, there were 2 of us. We've got 1 now. Somebody volunteered to go and take the training, and we have another adult instructor. So we'll have 2 instructors for youth, 1 for adults, and then maybe 2 more for private courses. All right, thank you very much. Councillor Lantaigne. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. And every year that I see the presentation on tennis, I say to myself, you know, it's a great sport. So now, don't take this question that I have for you in the wrong way, but you know, I'm sure that there's no issues with the services that you offer. They're offered in both languages, but there's something that I noticed, and I just want to raise it. It's a constructive comment. But when I look at your new logo, I see it in English only. Now, that's a really small detail, but EAST for established, you know, I mean, I'm just wondering if that meets the standards, or does that create a problem, you know, for things are supposed to be bilingual. But and I hope that you won't take that the wrong way. It's a constructive comment. I don't know if you have any comments on that, or well, that we can ask our designer to change that. It's pretty easy to do. It's just a small detail. Okay, it might be, I mean, a little bit exaggerated, but I see it in English only, so. Okay, well, you do what you want with that comment, and maybe it's okay. Like, this is new. This is the first time that we've displayed it, we've showed it to anyone, and we've just finished it. So I think we still have the chance to talk with the designer and to change a few little things, to put the final touches on the logo. So that's a good point, and it's the perfect time to let us know before we go to the final draft. Okay, well, listen, this is a clear improvement over the other logo. It's the first logo was a bit of a cartoon there. This is more serious. All right, thank you, councillors. Thank you for the presentation, and have a great season.
Le deuxième groupe qui présente, c'est le groupe de cricket.
The second group is the cricket group.
The second group is cricket. Bonjour.
Yeah. Thank you for your time, councillors, your worship again. As you all know, cricket is a team game. So I got a couple of members of my team here and association to present the game. For those of you who are unfamiliar with cricket, as I said, it's a team game. It resembles baseball. It's a hit and run play, so it's fun. And my colleagues here, Nitesh and Afzal, both are residents of Dieppe. Afzal owns a store in the Dieppe Mall, and Nitesh works at TD in the mall. So they're pretty close by here.
So he's the money guy of the operation, right?
That's right. That's absolutely. He used to be the treasurer. Now we removed the treasurer from him, and he's the treasurer now. We are so delighted to be in front of the council today. I can't even begin to explain how happy I am. I moved to the Greater Moncton area about 10 years ago, and cricket was just absent. And as you can see from my face, age, and hair, I'm much older than most of the people I play with cricket. And when we started re-establishing cricket about 5 years ago, just before the depth of COVID, we used to go to St. John and Fredericton every weekend. Every weekend, we used to go and play there. And I did what I could. As growing kids, I could not afford to do all the weekends. And that situation has changed. Starting last season, we have teams from Fredericton and St. John coming to Dieppe. And that has been due to the welcoming nature of the Dieppe city. There were no outdoor fields that were comparable, that where teams could come and play in this region. And we have created one. We are evolving. We have started there. So our association is called the Greater Moncton Cricket Association, and I represent Dieppe Cricket Club and the Kodiak Cricket Club, which intentionally we are named it. As we know, there's a further reach that can happen over several years. And we do take your point, Councillor, about the language and the logo. We heard it, we get it. We'll make that change also. Just getting into some of these things, I'm going to just talk a little bit about the mission and vision of the organization. Just by virtue of introduction, cricket is the second largest sport played in anywhere in the world. There are close to 1,000 that we think in Maritimes alone that play cricket, and there are probably more that we think there are 1,000 that are actively playing year round. And we mostly participate in outdoor cricket, which is where the Lakeburn field comes in. At the same time, we also had an indoor tournament yesterday, and our association ended up winning. So we are very happy and delighted that we are actually raising the bar again. Locally, we have got students, professionals, women, kids that are actually associated and are playing. Like I said, 5 years ago, it was unknown, almost unknown, that there was cricket happening around Maritimes, around Moncton, around Dieppe or Riverview. Now it is definitely happening. You can see it in your DM. You can see it in Lakeburn. You can see it in some of the schools, indoor gyms that is already being played. So our vision of the mission for the association is to develop cricket in Dieppe, in Maritimes, and across Atlantic. And we are on a good journey. What you'll hear from us today is this association and the club has brought in private sponsors, associations to create a sustainable club that can run for long term. And we have done it in a short time. We have done it methodically. What we have is people running businesses, running companies that have actually come together to form the association, and with help of the Dieppe city, we are able to get a facility that was lacking. And our vision is simple, making this as a cricket hub. There is no single hub today that exists as far as cricket is concerned. And it is more important than now, and you'll hear through the presentation, that some of the immigrant population that has moved into our province recently they like it. They want to have it their own home, and this provides the social cohesion to actually stay back, retain. And Afsal has opened a business. He took a job, Nitesh. People are staying back as a result of actually getting to not only play, but it becomes where you meet people that you want to have friends with, or you want to hang out, and people have got jobs. People have bought houses as a result of that. So I'm so happy that is actually creating a momentum, and you will see some specific examples that will actually provide that through. So Nitesh, who is a TD, is going to talk about goals and challenges.
Thank you, Venkesa. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nitish, and I'm going to go through the goals, what we as an association or the club we have. To start with, as Venkesa was explaining, that we have been into cricket in New-Brunswick from past 5 years. Now, the development, what we have seen in the past few years, what we want is we make Dieppe as the hub for Atlantic cricket to start with, because the kind of facility we have here, it is one of the best facilities we have seen when we were playing from past 4-5 years. And when we compared this with what we had before, this was one of the best facilities. So that during that time, we came up with an idea that let's make this as the hub. And of course, we would need some developments for that. But yeah, that's our focus. As this is a sport, we also encourage active lifestyle, and the kind of competition we have, it automatically encourages the players to be more fit, to get into a healthy routine, which would help them in being better at the sport. As every club wants, we want to attract more people so that there is more competition, there are more teams, and people get an opportunity to play this game, which was not existent 4-5 years back. So we want the locals, we want the youth, we want the people who are come here for their jobs to come involved with us and have this kind of an active lifestyle. Then we also encourage, after especially we have got this ground, there are teams from Halifax, there are teams from PEI who have traveled specifically to Dieppe to play the game. And because of that, what happens, the tourism for the city increases. They have stayed back here. They have tried different cuisines here. So this is kind of a thing what we want, people coming from outside to see what Dieppe offers them. So that was a big win for us. During that path, we have had few challenges because we are pretty new. The sport is pretty new to this area. One of the challenges what we faced last year was with the booking of the ground. Because we didn't have the whole of it, there were people who booked the ground and then it wasn't available for the tournaments or the practice sessions, and that basically it was not the authority was not in our hands, so that we could have more tournaments. That was one challenge. Second thing was the field what we got. Again, it was a new field. So we faced few challenges such as water clogs during the rainy season, which had few injuries, but nothing major. But that's what our focus is, to level the ground so that we can decrease those kind of incidents. And last, but again, it's not the last but not the least, it's the cost of the field what we had paid last year, because when we compare it to the different cities, it was a little higher. So the cost of the ground at the end of the day comes on the players as well, because we divide the cost amongst every player there, whoever has registered. So we want that to lower down so that the people or players don't have budget constraints in that matter. So I think that's one of the main things what I wanted to cover. I'll hand over the mic to Afzal, who will take us through the success points for our club. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nitesh. Good evening, all. So I can say we had a real solid 2023 year. Over the last 2-3 years, we had around close to 150 players registered for our association in Dieppe and then Kodiak as well. Just last year, we have close to 70 new player registrations. That is the reason that we have to start a new club called Kodiak Cricket Club. And so that is a big success. And that is one of the reasons that we had that success is that 2022, we were the champions. So people watched us on social media, they loved our culture and they wanted to join us. And the other thing is about the sponsors. Probably our association is the first, and our team has the highest sponsors across maritime. I can proudly say this. We have around nine sponsorship. The reason for that is that when someone sponsors us, we always think how can we return something to them? For example, like Andre LeBlanc, the realtor. We already bought 9 houses with him across that 150 people. And I can say maybe 16 as we speak, they are doing their showings. So when we have sponsors, we always make sure that what we can give them back. So that's why we have almost 80 to 90% of retention for almost all the sponsors. So the other thing is, when players join our association, we, the board of our association, we make sure we understand their need. We not only support cricket-wise, we not only support sport, we help them get the job. Like Nitesh, he's the manager in TD. I'm sure, correct me if I'm wrong, he has helped almost 6 people to get job. And I myself, I was working with RBC for 5 years, and then I started my own business in the mall, Freshly Squeezed. Then I gave jobs to 3 people. So we make sure we are close to the community. And I myself, Nitesh, there are 6 more bought houses in 2023, 2022, so that we are close to the DF field. So DCC remains one of the top teams in New-Brunswick, in Maritime, with the highest number of registration. We have our president, Venkisa, representing Cricket Canada, Senior Cricket Canada, and that's one of the proud moments for not only us, but New-Brunswick as well. CBC has also covered that on social media, on the news. So congrats, sir. So field usage. So there is a field in Riverview as well. There are a few fields in St. John, Fredericton. But the specialty when we book Dieppe, right, we make sure that we cover the full season. Of course, there are, depending on the rain, a few days get cancelled. But otherwise, we make sure that we utilize the field throughout the fall and summer. So this is an overview of the success we had, and hopefully, we try to continue the same in coming years. If in fact, getting more sponsors, having new players registered. So the other thing that I want to cover today is that the opportunities that we have. So anyone will agree to me that, we are never satisfied with the sponsors that we have. There is an opportunity for the sponsors to join and support the team, because definitely we always think to, return to them always. And affordability, though, we try, if there are students who want to play cricket, obviously when they are students, they don't have enough cash flow for them to pay registration. We reduce the fee for them from 200 to 100, but still there is an opportunity for us to make sure instead of 100 we just give them free registration. So that way there are more people register, and that way the club and the sport is growing in New-Brunswick. So networking communication, we are focusing on social media, like Facebook, Instagram. Whenever there is a tournament happens, whenever the league, like Venkisa mentioned that we just won the trophy yesterday. and it's good to come here. Whenever we do something good, we always, post on Facebook, Instagram, social media, so then we have, more reach, and then people always come to us and join. And recently, in the last 6-7 months, me working in the mall, running a business in the mall, I see the amount of people coming from Ontario itself, not just from different country. Ontario, they are moving to New-Brunswick because New-Brunswick is a wonderful place. So there is an opportunity for us to go into the people, do more advertisement on social media, and get more reach. So our future is, we have conducted, Nitesh and Venkisa mentioned, we have invited teams from PEI. We have invited teams from Nova Scotia. So this year, our goal is to start our practice games, from first, if not latest would be second week of May. So that way we can host more people from PEI, more people from Nova Scotia. So that builds, economy for Dieppe, and that builds economy for New-Brunswick. That is our future, to conduct more tournaments. And we want to invite other teams so that they get to play us. So this is an opportunity for, most people, they don't travel to New-Brunswick. When there is an attachment with the sport, right? They just come and play sport, and they just stay here for 2-3 days. So they go to beach, they look at the mall, they see people, they see the culture. So that way, so they have that positive experience, and they want to come back again, not just to play sport, but to visit New-Brunswick. So this is also one of our future goals. And the last but not least, to involve more community, events. So we have gone to middle school, high school. We have introduced a sport. Last year we went to University of Moncton. We went to a few schools like Lakeburn. There are other few schools that we have been. So this year our goal is to have at least 5-6 more sessions, introduce our sport and promote our sport throughout the school in New-Brunswick. So thank you for your time.
Well, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Question de la part des membres du
Questions
Conseil.
by council members. Councillor Lantang. Thank you, Your Worship.
Very interesting. Thank you for your involvement in the community. It's nice to see a new growing sport. I'm very curious about. I haven't watched or never played cricket before, but I just have a couple of questions just by curiosity. You're saying there's about 150 players in your organization. So how many players per team? For a team, is it 10, 15 players? How many players?
The number of playing members will be 11 on a given day. Generally, a club will have 15 players.
Okay.
That 150 is just our clubs.
Okay.
If you think about the entire New Brunswick, there are about 15 teams now, outdoor teams. So that's 15 times 15, 225. And then there are indoor teams. That's where the numbers come up. So our team started with 5 people. The 3 of us are here and 2 are not here today,
Nice.
but they are with us still. So we have gone from 5 to 150 in 5 years. Just 2 clubs of ours.
Wow, congratulations.
And by the way, I wanted to invite all of you in summer. Come down to Lake Burnfield. It's an easy sport to watch, and you can sit down and just watch the game. If somebody wants to know how it's played, we'll be happy to give an education session as we play.
And my other question is, you're talking about tournaments and games. Do you have like a league, like there's scheduled game and there's a league with standings and stuff, and all over summer?
Exactly. So the way it works is there is a provincial level association, the New-Brunswick Cricket Association. In the New-Brunswick Cricket Association, there were 11 teams last year. I think this year it's going to go to 13 or 14. And there are 4 other teams that's not in that association, in a different association. So we play through the weekends, through June, as soon as the weather permits, till about October, every weekend. In addition, we organize tournaments for PEI and Halifax that bring teams here, and also some local tournaments because the sport has grown here. There are 7 teams locally now. There are 5 of us now, there are 7 teams. So that actually provides a little bit of additional fun and utilization of the fields.
Nice. Anyway, I'm looking forward to go watch a game, learn more. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
Merci, Madame
Thank
Jeannet.
you. Councillor Jeannet. Thank you, Your Worship.
And congratulations on the tournaments that you bring here and bring people from other cities of the Atlantic provinces. So if people, I see that you want to involve a little bit more of the community. So if an adult or someone in the community want to learn how to play, can they contact you? Do you have already like instructors ready to teach?
Absolutely, we would love to do that. One of my, just personally, just where I'm in my life is, and I'm on the north side of 50, on the other side of 50. It's a unique opportunity to introduce a sport in a country, right? So, and we have Facebook, we have Instagram, like
Okay.
Afzal talked about, we have email. People can reach out on Facebook on Dieppe Cricket Club, and we'll be happy to introduce the sport. We have been to schools, we have been to University of Moncton to introduce the sport, help people learn, and we want to continue doing that. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Personne d'autre? I don't
Anyone
see
else?
any other lights. Alors, merci. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you. Thank you very much.
this and for showing up every Sunday.
Thank you.
Alors, ça nous amène maintenant à la troisième présentation
That
qui
brings us to
est
the third presentation now, pickleball.
avec Monsieur Marc Leblanc.
Marc Leblanc is here to speak to us about this. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for welcoming me back this year. I'm with Louis Marcel Daigle. Louis is a member of the board, and he is responsible for managing the volunteers for the indoor season. Things are different for the outdoor decisions, but once again, we want to thank the city for the land that they will, the fields that they will soon be opening. Thank you to Denis, the facilities team. They are great to work with. There's a great communication as well with the staff that we work with. So we're going to give you, we're talking about the mission, the objections, our success stories, our challenges, our opportunities, and then the future of the club in 2024. So here you see the members of the board, 2024. So to the left, Éric Alain, Gilles Volpe, Evelyne Baudry, Danielle and Paulette Bordage, Louis Marcel and myself, Louise Vasseur, Charlene Jenkins, and Marc Doiron as well. So we meet on a monthly basis. Now recently it's more frequently. We had a 2.5-hour meeting last week to get ready to put the final touches on the opening of the outdoor season. So here's our vision: to have permanent quality outdoor and indoor facilities, and eventually that would allow people of all ages to play pickleball in an inclusive manner. And here, we're basically talking about based on the skills of players as well, and physical ability as well. And then to have the resources and member commitment to host provincial and national competitions. And so that means that we'll have people helping us, volunteers and staff, and so forth. Our mission is to develop and organize pickleball in Dieppe for people of all ages. That's always been our mission. Our goals: to promote the sport, to offer each member the opportunity to learn and improve his or her game, to offer training sessions and clinics, where we'll start doing that again, organize free sessions, league games, and tournaments, and encourage high standards of safe play, and so that people always feel welcome and that they can always play in this recreational sport. All right, our successes for 2023. When I sent the presentation 12 days ago, we had 329 members, but we've gone up by 40 members since then. So we're at 369. And one question we're asked is that are we going to eventually limit the number of members? But for the time being, no. Riverview did it, Moncton did it, but there was another club that was created in Moncton. But for us, for the time being, we're able to manage the membership numbers. All right, in terms of participation since October 2023, basically speaking, we have 2,800 participants. We've changed our system. So on an Antonin Maillet school, there are about 35 participants that turn out. There are 36 that are registered, and there are some people on the waiting list. And waiting lists are a new thing, and it allows us to manage the team. You know, we had teams where 60 people were, or evenings where 60 people would show up, but now we limit that. Lou McNairn, 24 participants, and then we're able to get into the CCNB gym on Sunday morning, so 9 to 11 and 11 to 1, and that allows us to host about 70 participants. So that brings us to, that's what that 2,800 participant number is made up of. All right, in terms of successes, we organized our second rendezvous. 124 participants turned out, so it was more than last year. We changed the format a bit, and we were able to donate $5,000 to the regional committee of the Acadie Games. So, and we have volunteers from the Acadie Games, and they're very helpful to us. They take control of the administrative works. It's dynamic young people, and you know, they're smiling, but I mean that picture's from at the end of the day, so they're very motivated. Last year, we gave a lower amount, but you know, there are people that were happy to give a donation to the Acadie Games. All right, this picture is, you can see here, the Everest Challenge. We were able to give $2,660 to that great activity. We had a training session, a level 1 training session. We found a gym, and we were able to get a grant for that as well. So we were able to bring in someone from Ontario. And that was about training people to give introductory sessions in the sport. We had a holiday season event. It was a pizza night that we organized. So Marcel is the one that's responsible for doing that job, and it was very successful. And then the first year, because we had access to school over the March break, we offered 2 training sessions, one intermediate and one advanced level, on Mondays and Thursday. So that was very successful, and we had lots of participants. All right, our challenges, futures, and opportunities. Well, the outdoor grounds management, that'll be a challenge, but an interesting one. So we had we collaborated with the city on building a shelter, basically to get out of the sun, and a shed. So we agreed with the city to share the costs of that, and we have a bit of money, and we try to get grants as well through provincial programs. Now we have 2 MLAs. Now last year I had used my personal address, and we had money from one MLA, but this time we changed addresses, so we hope that we'll be getting money from one of the MLAs. I ran into him on Saturday, and he told me not to worry, but I'm thinking maybe he didn't see our application. But anyways, so that should be done soon. Our day-to-day management, you know, we're there basically 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. We've already had 3 student summer jobs. They'll be starting in June, and they'll be with us for 12 weeks, and we're very happy with that. We're waiting for news from the federal government. We should be getting that soon. We conducted interviews. We had 4 excellent candidates. We were very fortunate, and we confirmed with them that we were ready to hire them. So depending on the availability of those young people, I think we'll have a good team. We hope that we can keep them. We'll train them. We're going to teach them how to play pickleball so that they can give introductory sessions to the sport, starting with young people and then eventually with adults. The number of members, I told you that we had 369 members. Now, to play this summer, to limit the number of transactions, we're selling summer cards for $100 a piece. We sold about 80 the first day, and then we'd be going 10 or 12, selling 10 or 12 after that. So people will be able to come out and play pickleball. If you're a member and you don't have your card, you'll pay $5. But if you're not a member of Pickleball Dieppe, you'll be paying $10 per game, and a game lasts, or a session lasts, about 2 hours. So that's how we're going to do things. And then in our calendar that we share with the recreation department, Saturday a few hours and Sunday a few hours will be shared with the city. It'll be offered free of charge to people, to residents, to come out and play the sport. We're also going to start our introductory sessions. We stopped this before Christmas because we had too many people wanting to learn. We had 20 or so people per week, and then most of them wanted to continue to play, and then we had too many people in the gym. So we said, okay, well, we'll stop that, and we'll start it up again in the spring when we have 10 fields. So we'll have it'll be more likely that we'll be able to kind of accommodate these people. We are organizing an outdoor tournament from August 16th to 18th, and so we were wondering what to do if in the event of rain. It's an outdoor event, so we won't be going into a school or an arena. When we said, well, when it rains and people are on TV, people are playing tennis on TV, they don't go indoors, they continue to play outdoors. So that's what we're going to do. We want to include young players as well. Even our average age, is going down. 2 years ago, we were at about 61, 62 years old. Now we're at 60 or 56, sorry. So we've got a good variety of people who are joining the club. And then our big challenge for the fall is gymnasiums. We were lucky we had the CCNB. We hope we can keep that. We hope other schools, we'll have access to other schools. But if we restart our introductory sessions, we'll have new members again, and those new members are going to want to continue to play in the fall. So we'll have to find other alternatives to allow them to play. And perhaps the city of Dieppe may one day build its own community gym, so people will be able to play in the day, in the daytime and in the evening. And our strategic framework is, well, you've seen this already. We're very focused on what we want to do, and we have an eye to the long term. All right. So I was supposed to do this presentation with Louis Marcel, but I ended up doing it myself. So thank you for listening to us. And if you have any questions now, any questions from councillors? Councillor Leboutier. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation and all the things that you mentioned. This and for the number of hours that you're putting in and the number of fields now. This is going to be new this year, so that'll be a challenge for you. So when does it open? We're excited about it. Well, we are too. I'm going to ask Denis. I wanted to ask him after, but I'm going to ask him in public. That's a good question. It'll depend on the weather. We're looking at early May. Everybody wants to open their sports fields at the same time, but we're looking at in early May. So it'll depend on whether the pickleball club can mobilize, but that's what we're looking at. And that's because it's new this year. Now, in lots of municipalities, those grounds are already open, the outdoor grounds. So it would be great, in coming years, you know, and especially with the nice weather that we've had this year, it would be nice to be able to open earlier. Yeah, and originally it was May 23rd, but with climate change, dates are changing. And we have checks to make on the grounds to make sure that all the details are okay. But that's what we'll be looking to open earlier next week, yes, or next year rather. Is that it? Councillor Thibodeau. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your presentation and congratulations on all your success. I just have a question. You talked about a tournament on the 16th or 17th of August. Is that with teams from elsewhere or is it just local? No, it's from people from outside. This winter we had people from PEI here, from Nova Scotia, from Fredericton, and we want to bring all those people back and even more. We hope to get to about 200 participants for the tournament. And you know, we're talking a lot about those grounds, so people are curious. And I had mentioned it last year, but we've got probably one of the most beautiful grounds east of Drummondville. So we're hoping that it'll draw people. Great, thank you. I don't see any other lights on, so once again, congratulations. Thank you for your commitment. And I'm excited to go there myself. Well, last year, there was one counselor who played pickleball. Now there are 3 of you, so it's doubled. So, and if it doubles next year, there'll be 6 or 7 of you that'll. It's actually tripled, not doubled, but. So we hope that the numbers will increase and that we'll see you there at the official opening. Thank you.
Prochaine présentation.
Next presentation is by Denis Leblanc, who will be giving us an overview of grants. Oh, sorry. I skipped over a line. That sometimes happens to me. We'll invite our friends from the Jeux de l'Acadie, Michel Mélenchon and Denis Leblanc, to come forward. This evening, we're giving you the beginnings of the Jeux de l'Acadie and tell you what Michel has been able to organize. That's our first presentation to Council. I would say that things are on the way for 2025. There's a key element in coming to tell you about some things, and in our presentation you'll see that we're moving ahead, but we have some preliminary information to give to you today. So the first part of the presentation will be done by Michel. Good evening, Mr. Mélenchon. Good evening, Your Worship and Council members. Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here for the first time. And I want to let you know that even though I was asked, we met with people in Boctouche, we met people in Memramcourt, we met with the Société, and I have 2 VPs who unfortunately aren't with us here tonight. Charlene Jenkins, who is in Florida for 4 weeks, and she comes home next week, and Yannick Boudreau, who is in 4th year of phys ed, who's in exams, and he's writing an exam tonight. And I have 2 members of my executive, Jason Ferguson, who's the executive secretary, and Denis Bourgeois, who is basically the treasurer. So both of them have a lot of experience behind them. Denis was treasurer, auditor of Pizza Delight, and Jason is the executive secretary of ACOA. So they're perfect members. So this evening, we're going to be talking about strategic positioning, the organizing committee, the various disciplines being put forward, invited delegations, further steps, and any questions if you have some. Basically, the Jeux de l'Acadie are the leader of cultural and sport development for young people people, for the French language, and for Acadian culture. My personal philosophy is that we want to bring younger people in, because when the last time I was in Dieppe was 20 years ago, I was chef de mission for the Southeast, and Marc Leblanc, I think he was president of the organizing committee at that time. And so we wanted to change those people out who were involved 20 years ago. So I tried to find some new blood and to interest more women in being on board. I wanted to find people from Dieppe, first of all. So I had ticked off all the boxes, but unfortunately, we go with people from the city itself, and then we'll get the experts that we can't find here, we'll get them from elsewhere. So with regard to values, Francophone pride, well-being, leadership, cooperation, we already work with closely with Memram Cook and Bouctouche. Just to give you an idea, we're not supposed to begin our finance campaign until the Bouctouche games are over. I found a finance person who is Roger Melançon's brother, who's responsible for the finance campaign. So there's no doubt that we're going to fill our budget quickly, but we want to begin right away. Memram Cook and Bouctouche are in agreement because they're a little short of funding, so we might be able to help them find some sponsors who will sponsor both games. I just want to say that we're working closely with the other regions. With regard to innovation, we are hoping to do new things. One of the new things we want to do is to have an application for those of you who know hockey or other sports. Everything is on apps. And so the games, that's not the case yet. So we're going to develop an app where ideally we'll see the games live. We'll be able to get quick results. We're talking with the city, and maybe we'll get some funding behind us so we could put cameras out at various spots. So those are the innovations we want to bring to the games. With regard to fairness, the same thing, sporting spirit and volunteerism. As I did a moment ago, you have the pictures of the board members. So she's VP Wisdom, and Yannick is VP Youth. We have Céline Fournet from the society who's working alongside with us. All right, we've already filled in some boxes, but we need a big team. We need 40 to 50 leaders, 900 volunteers. In Bouctouche, they don't have enough volunteers, so they're looking for them. They're big boxes. They didn't have a problem because they've found all members of the council. You're lucky. We're not going to do it that way, but they filled their positions very quickly, and then they got the other assistants. We have Monette Boudreau-Carroll, who was responsible Memram Cook. So she's coming after us. She's the expert in sports programming. We approached 7 or 8 people from Dieppe, and she is the one who said yes. Samuel Nadeau is going to be looking after the whole sports part of it. And Justin Guittard is going to be involved in culture and arts and culture. I met Séverine last week. She's found an employee who will help us coordinate everything with regard to the cultural aspect, promotion and publicity. We only filled that name in this week, and Marie Girard, who's in communications at Assumption, and her assistant is going to be Nicole Melancin, who is the former director of communications for the city of Moncton, who is now doing something else. So these are the priority positions who are going to start by developing a logo. So we have 2 good people associated with us who are going to look after that. With regard to services to participants, Miguel Levasseur, who's with NRCan. Financing is Léo Leblanc, former VP of Co-op Atlantic. General Services, we have someone whose name I'm not going to give you. I was expecting an answer today, which I didn't get. Invited delegations, and he's going to look after that. Volunteers, administrative services. Once again, we're still waiting to confirm those names. We hope to be able to do that this week. And protocol is Fernand Paulin, the former chef de mission of the Acadian Peninsula. So the various disciplines, the only thing I want to say to you is that since Memram Cook, the game's philosophy has changed. Previous to that, it was one block. All people came and everything happened all at once. And since Memram Cook, there are two blocks, two time blocks. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so there are sports that have been divided up. The reason we're doing this is to allow these small municipalities to welcome the games. So the Société decided to maintain this way of doing things for the next 5 years. And so we're going to keep the same way of doing things. So from Wednesday, June 25th to the next Friday, so it's going to be athletics, badminton, mini handball, male soccer, mountain biking, and a couple of other groups. And in the other block, which begins on the Friday, you'll have women's soccer, sports, ultimate frisbee, male volleyball, cultural, which is improvisation. Also, there are two demonstration sports that were recommended by the city, and is disc golf. We're going to keep that. The other one is photography and the cultural component. So we're in discussion right now with the Art Center and the Société, because we asked them the question. We said, is there anything else by way of culture that had never been done before? And so there are perhaps other things. We have the Art Center. We are able to offer something different. But clearly, photography, I think, is going to be good. But we might add another component of demonstration for sports and another demonstration for a cultural event. Also, we decided to do a learning block. And this learning block, everything will be happening around the Mathieu Martin School, but they will have the gym at Carrefour. So we'll take the Carrefour gymnasium and we'll show other sports to introduce people to other sports. So we're going to have a Paralympic sport that we're going to work on and we'll add. So there will be 2-hour sessions every day. People can come and watch and discover this new sport. Another thing we're going to do is with Indigenous groups or First Nations groups, and probably pickleball. Even if the demonstration sport of pickleball will be in Bucktouche, we think that with the fields, many athletes will be very different, and we can add a certain component that will be a very educational. So how to learn how to play, maybe workshops, clinics, high-level workshops and clinics. We're working on this right now. However, our hope is that the Carrefour gym will be filled with all kinds of different sports. And so sports to be discovered, or sports where there will be clinics and workshops for people to discover. The next point is the invited delegation. So in the Jeux de l'Acadie, the hosting municipality can invite delegations from Moncton, but we think in Dieppe, we think it's important. And so in the Jeux de l'Acadie, it was Dieppe in France, we had an invited delegation. And so we are hoping to do the same thing and invite Dieppe, France. There's a protocol to follow. So we want people to be able to come and have a great trip here and live an experience in Acadie through the games, and also to allow Acadian athletes to compete with sports athletes from other regions. And so there would also be practice competitions. In the protocol, they have to be in the athletes parade during the opening and closing ceremonies. They will be wearing white sweaters, and they will have the same privileges as those who are chaperoning or who are attending the athletes. the same thing will be according to the rating, which might have to be changed. With regard to financing, it's the responsibility of the City of Dieppe and partners to undertake this and to pay for the travels. This, of course, will be the biggest sports with other parents. But with regard to lodging, they're in the schools, and so they're the responsibility of the société, and also food. That's another great big expense for these young people. With regard to other disciplines, we have to make sure, or the group has to make sure, that we don't complicate things, but we simplify things rather. And so these sport disciplines, team sports, may not be necessarily allowed. So in the discipline, we were looking at athletics, mountain biking, improvisation, disc golf. These are the 5 disciplines that are being proposed to the delegation in the coming weeks. That's what's going to happen. There are a couple of people who are on holiday, but this invitation will be sent to Dieppe, France, so they can mobilize and get their funding. It's a big trip. It's a big undertaking. It's going to take a lot of time and money to organize that. And so very quickly, we're going to send out an official request to our friends in Dieppe, France. With regard to further steps, the first date isn't the right one. They're going, so I think on May 8th, then I think the next university is the 12th or the 13th. So there's first going to be an agreement signed between the municipality and the games organization. So it's the responsibility to prepare the regulations, incorporate and open a bank account, and then things are going to be signed. So it's a 3-part agreement, so to show that everyone has their defined responsibilities. In May, there's going to be a mini press conference to announce that this protocol has been signed between the COJOV and the organizing committee, the Société of the Acadian Games, and in June, there will be the signing. From the 26th of June to the 1st of July, these are the dates of the games in the Jeux de l'Acadie in Bouctouche. And the organizing committee are going to be there to see how things are happening there, to understand what worked well or what didn't work so well, in order to be able to do even better in 2025. And on July 1st, there will be 359 days to go before the Jeux de Dieppe. So we'll be there sooner rather than later. Thank you for your time and for listening. Thank you. Questions by council members? There being none, thank you to both of you for all these details. And as many of the members have done, you've either participated or you've had young people who have participated in these games, and how important these games are for our young people, especially for the opportunity to meet young people from elsewhere. You know, maybe it's from the northern part of the province or another area of the province as such. But in our case, with the young people of Dieppe, it's always been Dieppe in Normandy. It's always been a great experience when, not only when we go to visit them, but also when they come to visit. I just want to specify that this is the 3rd time that the games are being held here. So 93, 2002, and we're the only 3 municipalities who have had it 3 times. So we're doing well. Thank you.
Next item, Mr. Leblanc will be talking to us about 2024 subsidies, or grants, rather. I just want to talk a little bit today to give you a bit of context about how we analyze the grants. I won't be presenting all the results, but I want to present the ones that we analyzed and that we approved. So there, as you know, there are a number of policies that exist within the Community Development Department. So I'm just going to go through the list. So the first is agreements with the council, and these are multi-year agreements. So Atlantic Ballet Theatre of Canada, $10,000 that we give on an annual basis, and we're at year 9. Moncton Hospital, $10,000 for extraordinary care campaign, year 5 of 5. Notre Dame Cathedral Fund, Year 9 of 10, 10,000, and Boreal that you approved last year. It's the Center of Expertise, so we're at year 1 of 3. Partnership with CAFI, $13,000 a year, $50,000 to the University of Moncton for their varied fundraising campaign, year 4 of 10, and another $50,000 that's given to Vitality Health Network for specialized equipment. So we're year 3 of 10. So we're talking about a total of $153,000 that are given on an annual basis to various organizations. A lot of them are in healthcare or have a social mandate. Now, under policy L15, community groups, so $2,400 to the Army cadets, $2,500 to the Dieppe military veterans, $40,000 to Pro Kids, and $50,000 to the youth home, or youth house rather. $75,000 to the DAC for the operating grant, $80,000 for the artistic direction, the DAC, and then $75,000 to the Capitol Theatre. $6,000 for the Dieppe Scouts, $14,000 to the Extenso Rhythmic Gymnastics Club, and $2,000 for the Golden Age Club. So for a total of roughly $350,000. Now in this category, the hosting of events, L16 is non-sports events that don't deal with tourism either. So it encourages and supports accredited community organizations to organize events in Dieppe. And it encourages and supports the hosting of events by groups recognized by provincial or national association that are not represented in Dieppe. So $20,000 to Monde en Fête, and CAFE is the one that organizes that. $35,000 to the Salon du Livre, $30,000 to Franco Fête en Acadie, $1,500 to Fry Festival, $4,000 to Hubcap Comedy Festival, and $3,500 to the FICFA Film Festival. $5,000 to Dieppe Pride, $2,000 to the Arabic Culture Festival, which is a new festival, $2,500 to Pops New-Brunswick, which will be one of the partners for the Wednesday show this year with the youth orchestra, the Système Youth Orchestra. So for a total of $103,500. L19, this is a policy that provides financial support for young people or youth groups. So not all of we're not yet at the season where people ask for that money, but here's what we have so far. So the Atlantic Ringette Championship in Bedford, Nova Scotia, the Eastern Canadian Ringette Championship, and an event in Quebec as well. So we've given $3,200 so far from that budget. But if I remember correctly, in 2023, we went to about $70,000 in this category. So we'll see as the year progresses, and depending on the events, we'll see that amount go up. L22, that's a sports event support program. You saw that this weekend. That was the this policy that helped the Canadian Ringette Championship. So here are the details: $20,000 to the Mountain Bike Canada Cup, $2,500 to the 5th Dégel Ladies Tournament, $2,500 to the 50th M11, M13 competitive tournament, $2,500 to the U15 M18 tournament, $4,000 to the AAA Atlantic Championship, $3,000 to the Atlantic Short Track Speed Skating Championships, and $30,000 to the 2025 Acadie Games. So the total is about $64,500. So because of COVID, we had not necessarily spent money on this group. So that's why we're paying forward to 2025. So that's basically it for the grants. So L16 and L2, there will be more grants coming because we, as the year progresses, we'll have more. So I could do another presentation at the end of the year, but so far that's what we're proposing in terms of grants. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Leboutier. Thank you, Your Worship. Now, we had a review, I think, of some of the policies last year and a review of our policies, or was that last year? We had a specialist come to take a look at our policies, the way they operate. Yes, that work started, but I put a bit of a hold on it, and there was some more information that I wanted to go get so that we could, there are certain challenges and things like that that we had to look at. So that work is still underway, but we haven't finished that yet. But the project that was presented by our expert is, we're thinking about it and we're implementing things. Okay, thank you. My second question has to do with the number of applications that don't qualify. Are we able to respond to 100% of the applications that are made, or? Well, L19, that is where we turn down some of the application because it's very specific. People, sometimes some activities are not inclusive. But the importance of the policy is that sometimes we get an application where people just want to go to Florida to participate in a tournament, but they're not necessarily qualified. So there's a bit of ambiguity in that policy. So we'll turn down those types of applications. Sometimes there are groups as well where we talk with them. We don't turn a lot of applications often in the other categories, but at least since I've been here. Great, thank you. That's it for me. All right, Councillor Turgeon-Roy, please. Thank you, Your Worship. My question is kind of in the same vein. If we compare 2023, has there been cuts? Or is pretty much the status quo? Well, until I have policies, until I've finalized the policies, to allow me to explain why we give a certain amount and not another. So when we give $50,000, for example, we want to be able to explain why we give that, and we're looking at all of that and in all our policies, so that when I come to council, I can say, well, I gave $50,000, and this is why I gave that amount. So we're working on that. So right now, it's the status quo. We've made some changes, but nothing substantive. Okay, thank you. Councillor Godbout, please. I just wanted a clarification. Repère Jeunesse, what is that? It's the Boys and Girls Club. So they wanted to be more inclusive. They called themselves Repère Jeunesse. But I think they've gone with BGC now. All right, that's what it is. Okay, thank you. All right, is that it? Councillor Jeannet, please. Oh, it was this. I had the same questions, yeah. All right. No one has anything to add. So thank you, Mr. Leblanc, for your presentation. And that brings us to the next item, item 5.
Presentation
number 6, chickens raised in urban environment. The feathers are going to fly, I guess. Thank you, Your Worship. And good evening to you, council members. As the title says, we're going to do some follow-up with regard to the file that was mandated to us in planning and development to look at what's happening and also to do some thinking about raising chickens in an urban environment. Before getting into the presentation, I want to give you the context that the municipality had done a survey of its residents in 2015 about the whole matter of whether people would want to or see things in a favorable or unfavorable light if raising chickens were allowed in backyards in the city. So here was not a very clear overview as to whether it was something that people wanted or not. There was clearly mixed feelings, as this is showing you on the screen, because this is a survey that happened in 2015. In 2020, we asked the same question again. And you see that the figures are more directed toward agreement. People seem to be more open to being in agreement if people had an opportunity to raise chickens in an urban milieu. However, I think that according to the interpretation of this survey, that the feelings were still fairly mixed. So this goes back to 2020, this survey. And on that note, I will go to the matter of regulations to once again give you, as members of council, a context of what's allowed within the limits of the municipality and the context for that. So you have in front of you a fairly general map of the area of Dieppe and the annexed area. So it's a much bigger and wider area than before. So we have 111 square kilometers of land. And so raising chickens, if you will, not necessarily in an urban environment, was still allowed on over 50% of the area and lands of this municipality. Here, the point that I want to raise with you is that raising chickens, be it for an agricultural use or artisanal use, is only allowed within 3 zones: RA, RR, and RR2 zones. Once again, we note that the urban context or the built environment is still semi-rural or rural. These are not urban zones, if you will. So when it comes to the issue of artisanal agricultural use, it allows a maximum of 12 birds. So the word birds represents different kinds of fowl, if you will. So it could be chickens or other kinds of fowl. It's still not clear what this means. So if you were to illustrate, if you will, the requirements for a zoning bylaw, there's a requirement that the activity has to be done so you need to do this on an acre of land. And so the usage as such is a minimal distance of 30 meters from a public road. There's a boundary of 6 meters around the whole property line for the backyard. And there's a requirement that the activity where the hen house would be on this parcel of land would be 20 meters from any lodging. In our service, we did a case study to see if the current regulation would apply properly in an urban environment, a zoning environment. So we did a quick case study for Zone 1, R1. So you have the map here, which properties which would be open to this R1 zoning, where these cases would be available. And very quickly, we saw that the regulation is not well adapted to be raising chickens in an urban environment. And even as we started to think about things, very quickly, we noted that there are some issues that would arise. Clearly, when we try to integrate a usage where there's a kind of activity aligned with animals, there are health issues that arise. this is a point which needs to be mentioned here today. The whole urban built environment, clearly, when you have a use which is associated with an accessory building like a hen house, then these accessory buildings are closer to other buildings, and this might create some challenge with regard to the look of things or even general distances between structures. There would be neighborhood conflicts with regard to noise. There's a certain level of noise that's associated with this kind of use, but there might be other kinds of nuisances that might arise. Maybe the birds could escape from the hen house. They could attract other kinds of animals as well. So we ourselves have seen some conflicts in the use, and we've had complaints about this type of use. There's the issue of animal well-being. That's a very important consideration. And also illegal commerce, where people, if they decide to sell the products or eggs, for example, so if it's technically an activity which needs to be regulated. Once again, here's how we thought about the regulations. In our presentation, we wanted to talk about if we're going to regulate things, then that we need new requirements with regard to zoning bylaws. Also, you'd have to consider that there would be no slaughter or sale of products, and also think about some kind of registration process in order to manage the number of birds on a property, and you'd have to know how many chickens would be raised within our boundaries. So we're talking, if we allow this type of use in urban areas, then we could probably anticipate a higher number of complaints related to this type of usage or projected usage. Also, you need a way to dispose of animals that are sick or dead, and also issue a good practices guide for raising chickens in an urban environment. So at this point, with the information that we've given you here today, and also with the way we've been thinking about these things during in our planning and development, also note that it's not necessarily the planning development service that would be developed, that would be involved in developing rules and regulations, but also communication department, and also any communication of zoning changes, should there be any follow-up, legally speaking. So we are not recommending any development of procedure for the reasons that we've mentioned in the report or in our presentation today. So should the council ever want to look at the matter with citizens, we could certainly look at doing a survey in the future, which would look more specifically at this matter, or more closely at this matter, and look at various specific requirements in order to survey citizens more specifically regarding this use. So this ends my presentation and the follow-up on this matter. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. Thank you. Thank you. Now to questions. Council members' questions? Councillor Le Boutillier. Thank you. It's more a question for information about the regulations that exist already. I do not see that for citizens who have birds to raise, is there a regulation which limits? So is there going to be fencing to prevent the birds from roaming around? You know, the hen house is a requirement, and the hen house has to be found at some distance, either 20 meters from a building. It has to be a specific distance away from from property. So 5.7 and 9.13 zoning bylaws show these requirements related to those zoning bylaw. So the hen house where the birds live, yes, if the use is allowed. Okay, if it's in the zone. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Turgeon. Thank you, Your Worship. So as I look at this and listen to the recommendations, I'm wondering if, before we start getting in another project like this, should we not go back to the bylaw, which is in rural development? So what we have right now, so the city is getting bigger, and those areas which are identified as rural are less and less rural. We're coming into the whole circle, if you will. And based on the experience of complaints we have received and that I have seen since I was elected, so the complaints that we receive don't allow us to intervene under this bylaw. So I'm wondering if at this point in time, as we raise the question, should we not go back to this bylaw and give ourselves the tools which would allow us to intervene in any delicate situations or touchy situations, or unpleasant situations. I'm trying to choose the right word here. And we look at whether we want to move in that direction. Well, that's a good question. And I think I would say that this is probably a directive or a decision that comes from council. If it's debated publicly, at this point, we implement a bylaw which allows this kinds of use. If you have a fairly big property, yes, of course, we do receive complaints. Clearly, some people don't respect the requirements that are in place. So when we have to do the follow-up, we do it when we have proof that there's an issue to be resolved. But ultimately, the decision comes back to you as council members. And if you want to discuss this idea and maybe remove this agricultural use, artisanal use in a semi-rural area. Well, I guess I'm throwing the ball back to your court. What Councillor Le Boutillier said, and as I look at the regulation and the, there are no fence, there's no fencing. We're talking about a small hen house, and the problems that we have right now are the fact that these chickens are moving around all over the place. So we can't act. It's because nothing is in our bylaw to help us. So these are all small things with the experience that we have because of these situations. I think it's going to be worthwhile bringing it back to the council. Right. And I think that is going to have to be some thinking done in the coming time, looking at the zoning bylaw to review the municipal plan, review municipal bylaws. These are some of the thinking that we're going to have to do with regard to these requirements. It's a great opportunity to do that. I think it's clear with your thinking and the recommendation. I think that we should be I wouldn't support looking at this idea further, especially with the experience I've had with residents who told me of their experiences too. So I'm welcoming your recommendations. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire.
Councillor Chenet, thank you, Your Worship. In the same way that Councillor Turgeon-Roy and Le Boutillier have spoken in the rural areas, to see if there's any reinforcing that we can do to ensure that things be respectful for neighbors. I haven't seen any complaints in that area, but from what I hear, there were some difficulties in the more rural areas and in the more urban centers. According to the drawing that you've put in your slides, you see that in R1 zoning, there's sometimes not even an opportunity to have the required space. You have to have some distance from your neighbors, and it's going to be complicated to implement that. So for example, if we authorize it in R1, could we say on condition that there is a fairly big distance between the buildings and establish a certain kind of, I don't know if that's something that you had looked at. Yes, clearly. It's what we had specified, that you have to adapt the current regulation in an urban context. yes, you know, all the setbacks, all the elements where you put the hen house, all these things need to be considered. But you also have to look at the projected use in a worst case scenario. So if we allowed 4 chickens per R1 property and everyone decided they wanted to do this, well, then there's a whole matter of talk about density, but you can talk about chicken density. That could be a problem. And there's the whole issue of public health. There are matters of competency that we as a service don't necessarily have. So we're creating a dependency on the other services, the other provincial departments, who themselves don't have the capacity to act if there are any communicable diseases or things that like happen. No, I don't want to scare the members of council, but it's certainly a consideration that in an urban environment, we have to consider the whole matter of density and control and how the municipality undertakes control and follow-up for these types of usages. I think that it's something that's possible, but logistically speaking, we should be able to do things correctly. You know, if we have the proper regulations and, you know, required to have a fence, for example, once that is all in place, I think things would be possible. But if citizens are, you know, if they have an interest in doing this in an urban environment, and I know there are some who have them in the city at the present time. I also had a question. So the people who did the presentation, were they invited? Are they aware that this evening this presentation was being done? I don't remember the names of the people who were there. Unfortunately, we didn't invite anyone. We'd be pleased to do some follow-up with that group. We could go back in the archives and, you know, send an email and communicate with them, and so they can have a look at the presentation. It's certainly our intention to be transparent. And if the members of council so wish, we can communicate with them and tell them about the presentation. Invite people to communicate directly with us if there's anything to follow up on. So if council were interested, I think you'd have to go through perhaps do another survey. Thank you. Councillor Thibodeau. Thank you, Your Worship. You've already answered my question, but I want to say that I view your recommendations very favorably. Thank you. Councillor Lantagne. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your presentation. I also support your recommendation 100% for the urban environment. Just to clarify, make sure I understood that in the rural areas, this hen house, does the bylaw allow the chickens to move outside the chicken house, or do they have to stay inside the hen house? Unfortunately, I don't have the answer right now for that. I don't want to go in the wrong direction, but I'll have to do some follow-up. Because, you know, if the chickens are wandering around all over, this is why I'm asking the question. So if the chickens have to stay inside the hen house, then, you know, that's one thing. But if not, I would certainly be in favor of things being revised, as Councillor Turgeon-Roy has said, and that there be a fenced-in area around the hen house, that the chickens stay inside. That's my comment. Yes, I'll note that comment and I'll do the follow-up. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Godbout. Thank you. You know, with regard to bylaw amendments, I join the comments that I've already said, because at the end of the day, we want zoning bylaws to allow people to live in harmony inside the city limits. So when I look at the opportunity of raising chickens, I'm not against the idea of having urban chickens, but the danger is you're not necessarily living beside someone who wants to have that close by. So that's the harmony that disappears. So in the available options, is it possible for there to be in our urban development that there be urban zones where this type of activity is more encouraged? So, you know, if you want an area where those people who want to have urban chickens, they can go live in a certain area of the city, would that be allowed or unauthorized? I don't want 50,000 bylaws for everybody, but you know, what kind of city do we want to be? We want to have a place for all kinds of people. I don't want to normalize things that we know we all look alike. Do you understand? So the idea of having a variety of being and living in the world, and so where we can do it, I think we might be able to try it. And even if to say that in this small area of the city, it's going to be allowed. So if this is something that people want to do, like environmentalists or people who want to, you know, raise their own food or whatever, and there are some zones where, like, look, if you're buying in a rural area, is not going to be less expensive. And so if we have to accommodate all kinds of people in our city, so I'm not ready to say no to people who want to live in this way if we can accommodate them. That's what I'm trying to say. It's the opposite of the approach you're giving us. You know, there are, you know, to say, like, you know, it's not really for you to come to the urban areas in Dieppe. That's not the message we want to put forward either. How can we find a way to allow people to live in harmony? But if it's easier, you know, to live beside someone who has chickens, if you also want chickens. So maybe it would be possible in another area and people could live in harmony. It might be interesting to look at that. But I don't want to say to be the city that says, no, you can't do it here. That's it. Thank you.
Madame Leboutier.
Councillor Le Boutillier. Thank you, Your Worship. I want to come back to what many councillors are saying, which I totally support your recommendations and the idea of 3 zones that we have identified, R2, R1. These are the areas where these types of things can happen. Thank you. Thank you. I think that it's fairly clear from hearing people around the table what direction we're heading in. We don't want to be a city that doesn't accept people. We accept people. Maybe we accept the people, but not their chickens. And maybe that's a difference. However, it's something that our community has been living with for some years now. And we've heard some noise and issues between neighbors. So if we let that fester, it's going to be like the whole matter of garbage and bags along the walkways. You know, we're going to send people out to pick them up. You know, it becomes the same type of situation. So I think council's direction, without having taken a vote, and generally speaking, there seems to be some consensus about going in the direction of what you are recommending. Thank you. Thank you. Are there any further comments? Okay, let's move on.
Maintenant, question de stratégie.
All right, now let's talk strategic planning. A progress report for 2023. Ms. Landry, please. Good evening. Good evening, Your Worship, councillors. I'm happy to be here to present this overview of 2023 with regard to the progress that we've made on the strategic planning for 2020-2024. So this is an overview as of December 31st of 2023. So the mission is to shine as an inclusive and modern Francophone city that's proud of its Acadian roots and provides first-rate services and infrastructure in harmony with the environment. Our vision is to be a welcoming, dynamic, and ecologically responsible city. Our values are integrity, inclusion, and innovation. Now, under the strategic plan, the 2020-2024 plan, we had identified 6 focuses and 22 strategies. So community and cultural development, green, sustainable city, economic development and prosperity, spatial planning, or land planning rather, and quality infrastructure, citizen participation, and quality governance and municipal management. In 2024, we developed a tool that allows us to align our annual action plans with the strategic plan, to track our progress, and to identify any areas where there is a blockage. And so the tool is a collaborative dashboard that involves all the annual action plans of all city departments. And so we follow those plans and we make sure that they are aligned with at least one of the objectives of the strategic plan. Now, of course, we only monitor the implementation of our action plans. We don't have performance indicators that allow us to say where we're at for each of the strategy identified. So the results that I'm presenting today is the progress that's made in the annual plan for 2023. In the current exercise, we will be including KPIs that will allow us to measure the progress over a 5-year period. But for now, we haven't had that. We have 15 different annual plans to monitor and 22 different strategies. Now, in terms of the first focus, community and cultural development, for each strategy that had been identified, I give you the level of progress or the difference between the last time I gave you an overview, so in August, and so between August 2023, and then you see the progress up to December 23. So for number 1, the first strategy was to develop and promote the vitality of the Francophone community and Acadian pride. We are at 83% of it, or we've achieved 83% of that strategy. For enhancing the inclusion in cultural and recreational programming and activities, we're at 63%. For the strategy promoting a sense of belonging and resident or citizen involvement, we are at 50% of the objectives that we had set in our action plans. And for maximizing use of public and community spaces and facilities, we are at 23% of the objectives that we had set in our 2023 plans. So here's an overview of what we did for the first strategy, which was to develop and promote the vitality of the Francophone community and Acadian pride. So we reviewed our language policy. We made public statements. We promoted Acadian and Francophone activities. We developed programming with Francophonie partners. We hosted the 15th August celebrations. And during Francophonie Week, we promoted activities. And so what we still need to do, and we've begun this work, but we haven't finished it, is implementing a strategy that encourages our partners and organizations to support this objective. For the second strategy, so enhancing inclusion in cultural and recreational programming and activities, we offered annual community programming that values inclusion and diversity. We celebrated the first edition of the Canadian Multiculturalism Day. And so what remains to be done yet, and is to revise policy L16, which is the subsidy for event hosting. And we still need to develop fire and safety prevention tools for newcomers. The third strategy, promoting a sense of belonging and citizen involvement. So what we did was we highlighted different cultures in our communications tools. We held a citizenship ceremony here at City Hall. There was a great collaboration between immigration services and the fire prevention services to create awareness among newcomers. We created a video with stories about being the welcome and quality of life in Dieppe. We welcomed a group of young people with the mayor and our elected officials, and we held a personal meeting with newcomers. For the last objective, now earlier I had said that we were at 23% of our actions. So for this strategy, we started work on some of the aspects or some of our objectives, but we still have to work on policy L1 and LA. We want to evaluate the use of our infrastructure. But what we did do was revise the signage in our facilities, and we added a reservation employee. With regard to developing a green and sustainable city, we identified 4 strategies. So updating and implementing the sustainable development strategy, we're at 87% of our objectives, protecting our green spaces and continuing to develop parks and trails that value nature and diversity. We're at 100% of our objectives. Enhancing our natural features such as waterways and marshes. We're at 50% of our objectives, and improve and promote various modes of transportation and travel. We achieved 55% of our objectives. Now, in terms of the first objective, we created an environment department in 2022. We developed, adopted, and implemented the tree bylaw, and we planted over 10,000 new trees in Dieppe. 500 of them were in Rotary Park in collaboration with Mathieu Martin School. And so what's left is to update our greenhouse gas emissions action plan, and it's 50% completed so far. For the second strategy, which is protecting our green spaces and continuing to develop parks and trails that enhance Dieppe's nature and ecological diversity, we planned the purchase of land for accessibility and the development of our green spaces. And we organized celebrations around Earth Day. We're also working on the coastal trail project as well. For the third strategy, which was to enhance our natural features such as waterways and marshes, we promoted our parks and trails, and we created and this was in collaboration with Les Amis de la Nature, we created a garden for monarch butterflies. For strategy number 4, improving and promoting various modes of transportation and travel, we completed the implementation of the Urban Mobility Department in 2023. We developed a future vision for public transit. We redefined the mandate and structure for managing and delivering public transit services, both for public transit, on-demand transit, and paratransit. We also conducted a study on electrifying our municipal fleet. So we work and we continue to work on the design and financing of the multifunctional trail on Funk Street and Melançon roads, and we're establishing a road safety plan as well. In terms of the third focus, which is economic development and prosperity, we identified 4 strategies. So continuing to densify the downtown area and develop a cultural life there. We're at 99% of our objectives. Developing an environment conducive to business development through a culture of innovation and creativity. So we're at 75%. Making Dieppe a tourist destination, 38%. And becoming the destination of choice for Francophone immigration to Atlantic Canada. And then you see the percentage there. In terms of the first strategy, continuing to densify the downtown area and developing a cultural life. So we continued with the downtown densification plan. We promoted a downtown investment incentive policy. And in 2023, we saw the return, or 2023 rather, saw the return of cultural activities at Place 1604. And then a connection zone with a week-long program of activities for the summer period, and we had fun on ice as well, that activity. For the second strategy, developing an environment conducive to business development through a culture of innovation and creativity. Through Expansion Dieppe, we were able to offer professional support to entrepreneurs. So that was in Dieppe in 2023. So we had 14 new companies expanding or growing, 11 new startups. Expansion Dieppe held its 21st annual banquet. We did networking with the regional business community, and we did a lot of promotion as well on social media. Now, strategy number 3, making Dieppe a tourist destination. We developed a strategy for attracting and hosting sporting, cultural, and other events in 2023. We added a full-time employee for the creation of tourism initiatives. There was also the renewal of the connection zone, and I talked about that earlier. There was Expansion Dieppe's collaboration in the tourism sector, and then there was a continued partnership with the destination Moncton Dieppe. And there were a number of results that stemmed from that strategy. We had the YKM last summer, which was a success and put Dieppe on the map. We had the August 15th celebrations, and we're talking about 17,000 people who came to the show in Dieppe. The Mountain Bike Canada Cup as well. And in 2023, we added a community event with Ringette Canada and Hockey Dieppe as well. We had activities with them. The fourth strategy, to become the destination of choice. Well, what we did for that strategy is we promoted our immigration strategy. We made sure that we had an active presence in regional initiatives related to Francophone immigration. We forged ties with ethnocultural groups and associations in our community. And we worked with Expansion Dieppe on economic issues. So what still needs to be done is to define a service for welcoming newcomers. So the fourth focus area in the strategic plan was spatial land planning and quality infrastructure. So we had 4 strategies. Encourage the development of serviced land within the urban perimeter, and so we're at 73% of our objectives for the year. Maintaining existing infrastructure in good condition according to recognized standards, 50%. Stimulating the development in the region's well-identified hubs, so the downtown area, business and technology park, industrial park, and so forth, so 38%, and improving and optimizing existing infrastructure and adding new infrastructure to meet the municipality's future needs, 73%. So for the first strategy, which is to encourage the development of service land within the urban perimeter, we conducted we held a number of public consultations, including one on housing needs, and that was accompanied by a study. We developed an affordable housing policy, and we acquired land for development on Gauvin Street. And what we're working on right now is developing a housing strategy and action plan. For the second strategy, we rebuilt or repaired 2.8 kilometers of street and did preventive maintenance on 3.1 kilometers of street. We did building maintenance on the youth center and the town and the city hall. We installed a new permanent generator at the operational center, or no, sorry, we did repairs at, we installed flooring in Uniplex. We did repairs for Tennis Dieppe and Dieppe Soccer. And in terms of IT, we updated certain business systems and we replaced some equipment. And we also installed a permanent generator at the operational center. Strategy number 3, to stimulate the development of the region's well-identified hubs. So we acquired land for development. We updated expansion Dieppe's master plans, business plans, and financing structure. And if we look at what was invested in Dieppe, so in the downtown area, 18, and I'm talking about the downtown area and the business park, a total of $18 million were invested, $8 million in the downtown area and $10 million in the business park and the industrial park. Again, for the fourth strategy, which is improving and optimizing existing infrastructure and adding new infrastructure, we added bus shelters, public benches, and a transfer center. We installed washroom facilities at the Dover Community Park. We updated urban planning bylaws. We updated the telecommunication tower policy. We updated specifications and design standards for our infrastructure. We secured funding for the extension of Dieppe Boulevard, and we established a capital projects plan for 2024 to 2028. The fifth focus in our strategic plan was quality citizen participation. So our two strategies there were increasing citizen participation in the municipal decision-making process and continuing to diversify communications tools with the public. So for the first strategy, increasing citizen participation, we conducted a number of consultations. We did polls on the tree bylaw and on affordable housing. And in 2023, we held 6 public hearings. Now, in terms of the second strategy, further diversification of communications tools, we develop communication tools to better explain planning and development processes. We improved the practical information website on road projects, and we are working on establishing a citizen alert system. We communicated directly with residents. So the communications department drafted 155 speeches, and we issued 111 press releases in 2023. We also enhanced our social media presence. We have more publications that are more dynamic now, and we saw an increase in the number of subscribers in 2023. So we have 2,048 new subscribers, which is a 12% increase over the past year. And this is good because usually there's a decrease in Facebook. And then on Twitter, we have an increase of 2% in the French-speaking clients and 3% of English-speaking, and we have almost 10,000 subscribers. And our last focus is quality governance and municipal management. We have 4 strategies. One, which are to continue improving the transparency of municipal governments, and we achieved 100% of our objectives. To provide constant attention and support for our human resources, which are the municipality's most important asset, so 67%. Pursuing our efforts to ensure sound financial management at all levels of our organization, 63%. And continuous improvement of our working methods and processes, 52%. So for the first strategy, which is to continue to improve the transparency of municipal governance, we responded to over 170 media requests. And that's in addition to the press releases and speeches. So we responded to over 170 media requests. We facilitated sharing of project and initiative information with the community. We presented the quarterly financial report to the board or to council, and we created a monitoring tool for strategic planning action plans. In terms of the second strategy, which was to give constant attention and support to our human resources, we signed a new collective agreement in 2023, so with QP 4679. We implemented recommendations from the workplace assessment report. We improved interdepartmental information sharing. We completed the implementation of our organizational structure, so the supervision of new positions, and we developed coaching and feedback skills with fire department officers. And we have new positions as well in environment, mobility, immigration, IT, and planning and development. We also completed the HR team. There was a lack of staff there, and we also filled a number of vacant positions. There were several of them in the IT department. For the third strategy, which was to continue our efforts to achieve sound financial management at all levels of organization. So we revised the budget process in 2023. We implemented a new process for requests for additional employees, so for human or financial resources. So what you need for a request is a business plan, and there's an additional authorization level. We restructured our general ledger accounts, and there's an actuarial study on the valuation of sick leave that was carried out, and we implemented a group insurance cost reduction initiative. And so to continue on with that strategy, we enhanced the fire investigation team. We updated the municipal emergency measures plan. In terms of cybersecurity, we implemented multi-factor authentication for all employees requiring remote access. We updated the documentation available on the internet. So we also reviewed current internal policies, and we wrote procedures and document processes for the various departments. In 2023, in terms of continuous improvement, we identified 18 projects. So 8 were completed, 4 are in progress, and 6 that have not started yet. And so since 2014, 234 improvement projects have been completed, And so that's good. And of those 234, 30 have yet to be completed. So there are 26 from previous years and 4 from 2023. So this year, we made an effort to engage in reconciliation efforts with Indigenous communities. So we developed a protocol with them. Now I know when I present figures and I tell you that we've only achieved 50%. I know that you might be wondering like, well, what exactly have you been doing? But there were a number of projects, a number of opportunities, things that arose that were unexpected, and there are things that are brought to us by residents and elected officials. So we respond to those requests, and so things that had been planned and that can be delayed. Sometimes we do that to be able to respond to your requests and those of citizens. So thank you. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Lantin was the first one. Thank you. Well, you answered one of my questions, and I knew the answer anyways, but there is still work to do, and 2024 is well underway. But I have two questions, and this is not a judgment on your part. I think that what you're doing is very difficult, and I'm very pleased with your work. But in strategic planning, we always aim at achieving 100% of our objectives, but ideally 100%. But what's a good objective? Like 75%, or is there a kind of a percentage at which you say that's acceptable or not really? But it's difficult. I can't tell you that there's one good, a magic figure. What we're currently measuring with that tool is, we give a mark to each step. So for each project, there are a number of steps, and each step will increase the percentage. But so you might have 4 projects. One will take 10 months. The first, will take 10 months, and the 3 others are small things. So you'll spend time on your first project. So for example, the tree bylaw, for example, the tree bylaw took a huge amount of work. We had to think about it. We had to consult. We had to adopt it, implement it. So there's lots of work involved in it. So maybe we might have spent 80% of the year on that, but that was one thing that was identified among 4 other projects. So the result that you'll see is 25% because you've only completed one of the activities. Well, it's the same thing for a work day. I'm going to do this, this, and this, and at the end of the day, you weren't able to get to everything. But so I understand what you're saying, and yeah, we did have very big projects this year. That's true. My second question is this. So we've still got time in 2024. Things will continue in preparation for our next strategic planning session. Now, I presume that when you prepare a strategic plan, you transpose things from the previous plan, I imagine. Well, it depends on what we decide. It depends on what we want. We set ourselves 6 focuses in our 2024 strategic plans, but are we in the next plan, are we going to keep the same focuses? I don't know. We did some public consultation last week. There's a survey that's been online, that's still online for participants who are citizens who couldn't come and participate last Tuesday. But we'll see, what the issues are that we want to address and what the strategies and the objectives that we'll set for ourselves. So the difference with this new session is that we're going to give ourselves KPIs for those objectives, and we'll be able to see our progress over a 5-year period. So we're going to give ourselves an action plan, and we'll see how we're progressing for the next 5 years. Okay, so there's things will evolve and things will, things change, and some things will drop, things will keep. Yeah, some things will follow through to the next report. So for 2023, we said this earlier, Denis talked about certain policies that he was waiting for because he wanted, but they were in the 2023 plan. So we see them as unachieved or uncompleted, but maybe 80% of those that work was done. So we'll see in 2024, because he included him in his 2024 plan. All right, thank you very much. Thank you for the report. It's very interesting. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Jeannet. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your presentation. I really appreciate every time that this presentation, we get to see what you're working with and the requests that you get from elsewhere. And we also get to see that there's been progress made, that there's been improvements. I was wondering though, now you gave an example of, someone who had 4 projects and one was bigger than the other 3, and that required more time. Maybe there would be a benefit to evaluating projects in a different way. So projects that have a lot of steps to them have a lot more weight than the 3 other things that will maybe take a week each to do. Is there a way to do that? Well, we'd have to give a weighting to each action plan item, and we don't have that. We didn't do it. But we were coming from, that we didn't have anything to track the 15 different plans, but now we do have something, we can track them. So, but for the next strategic planning exercise, when we talk about that in 2025, this type of document will no longer exist. But we can see, if there is a way to give a weighting to the different projects. Oh, and maybe it can have an impact on your mood as well. And, I did more than I thought I got done. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Leboutier. I had 2 points that I wanted to raise. Well, first of all, on the action plan that you have, and maybe we just don't see it, but in an action plan, usually there's a deadline, that gives us kind of our bearings, and so that we know something is tentative. So I don't know if it's just something we don't see or if you've thought of it. So just a column that tells the team, to provide a date there. With the KPIs coming, that's excellent already. So it was on page 75. That's okay. I just wanted to raise that point. Maybe it's there, but it's in a different column that's not on the document. It's not on the table. Yeah, we don't see it here. We don't have that same information. This is the tool that, this is kind of like a homemade tool that so each direction has a tab, and for each direction we can see the progress. And the columns are hidden, but there is a date for 2023, 2024. And you can say, I'm going to do 50% in 2023, 50% in 2024. So that's all marked and it's identified. If there's a block, if we're stuck, we indicate, whether it's an internal issue or an external issue. So, okay, all right, thank you. Now, when, you know, there are sections where we've done a great amount of work on there. You know, we have new teams. We did a lot of work on certain bylaws. There's been a lot of changes made. For the next strategic planning exercise, you know, I see in our mission that we want to be a modern city. And, you know, our values are innovation. But one of the things that we'll have to work on in the next 5 years is our IT tools so that we can become more efficient. So whether with respect to whether it's making reservations, our website, you know, in 2024, you know, we have, I mean, okay, yeah, you have to use paper for some residents, but, you know, with artificial intelligence now, it's more than affordable now. So I think for the benefit of all our residents in terms of efficiencies and spending, we have to better use our resources. So, and I'm sure that this is something that we'll look at, and we might have to go outside. So for transportation, for example, we go and get engineering firms. I think we're there now. We have to be leaders in this area. Well, there have been challenges in terms of staffing with regard to technology and IT. That's a rare expertise. It's hard to find, and so that's something that we're working on. And you know, to be able to offer services online and that are up to date to our citizens, we need that staff. So, all right, Councillor Godbout. Thank you, Marie-Claude. We always get an impression that things are being managed well, and your presentations are always very clear and easy to assimilate. So I wanted more information on one point. One was on governance and municipal, so the transparency, the first strategy. Your second point was facilitating the sharing of information with the community. Could you give me a little bit more detail on that? So what was done in the last year with respect to achieving that information share or facilitate sharing of information? I know it's something that's of a concern to all, but to some of our residents, they tell us that we're not transparent enough. So could you elaborate a little bit on what we've done, what's been done? Well, I think we communicated more with, you know, in terms of our projects. So the communications department did a lot of work with the various departments. So whether it's with engineering for the work and for planning and development, you know, when there are projects. So we really tried to inform people more on the projects and the work being done. Did you do, and this is something that maybe we can consider for the future, but did we review our processes to see maybe if we can share information at an earlier stage? You know, looking at the timing, is that part of what's being looked at? Yes, policy or process review is something that we're working on for sure. All right, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Turgeon-Roy, thank you very much. Thank you, Marie-Claude, for the presentation. Under economic development, when we're talking about becoming the destination of choice for Francophone immigration, at the end, now definitely you're working on this, but so to define a service for welcoming newcomers, you know, we're talking more and more about retention. Is that part of the action plan for that strategic plan? Putting more focus on retention? Well, I would need help from my colleagues, I think, to be able to answer that question. So yes, Councillor, the question of retention is part of the vision that we want to improve. So we have 2 people in the immigration department, in our immigration department, and we're also working with recreation, so community life, and integrating these people into our community. We're also working closely with Kathy. So this evening we saw the group that came to make a presentation on cricket. I mean, it's in, you know, these people, we see that these people have a better sense of belonging to the community. So that's the approach that we're taking. Thank you for the presentation. I think, you know, I think at the council level, we don't realize the work that's being done in advance to get to where we're going to. I see it, you know, on a day-to-day basis. When something comes into City Hall, regardless of the department, but I'm usually the first to go and see Marc and to say, listen, can I go see such and such with your permission? Because I want more information. When things come to our attention, you know, I want to be able to answer your question. So that's just one example. What I would like to see, you know, I'm already starting to think of the next strategic plan, but you know, during negotiations with, you know, during bargaining with the union, what, you know, when we signed the collective agreement with them, I challenged them to sign our next collective agreement before the current one expires, because it's always there's always a game that takes place with the union leaders. You know, they say, well, you'll have this in your back time, so they can, but they use it as a tool at the end of the contract, but that drags things out so much that I think we can do things better and work towards objectives. And that's just one specific example, but I see you basically on a daily basis. I see city staff rather. I think what you presented us tonight represents what I see taking place and what I hear at City Hall. And so thank you for your excellent presentation. Now, I know that things can always be improved. You know, we always talk about ongoing improvement, and but I'm excited to see the next version. All right. Well, our day-to-day lives are filled with surprises. We have a great plan, and then something happens, and whoop, we have to, things change. So we constantly have to adapt. Yeah, well, we control what we can control, but the rest we have to, you know, things happen. All right, thank you. I believe that Marc-André.
Monsieur le maire, membre du conseil, j'ai
Good
demandé.
evening, Your Worship. I had asked for a presentation and I asked how much time? And they told me 10 minutes, but I'm the last one. It was a Canadian game that's starting in about 5 minutes. Is anyone else still watching this? Let me find my PowerPoint. Look, it's not long. But I think it might clear some things up. It's simply to let you know that one of the upcoming you're going to be getting a package in your council papers to approve the amendments that we're putting forward to 3 technical documents. The technical documents dealing with tenders design standards and standards and directives for subdivisions in the subdivision manual. So I'm going to explain what these documents are. These three documents that we use in engineering probably the most to control development projects, capital projects, and where we do project design, this all involved in this. These documents are all in English, I wanted to add. So any amendments that are being put forward are also in English. However, it is our intention to put these documents into translation in a very near future. These are highly technical documents, so it's going to take some effort by translators and staff if we need to review what the revise what the translators do, and also we will need to amend some engineering things that we're going to have to do by hand. However, it's our intention to have these documents translated. So the first document that I want to talk about is standardized tenders. These standardized tenders are, happen when we think about capital projects. They're the basis of our capital projects. A tender describes the criteria that the promoter and the construction people have to do. So if you want to build along Champlain Boulevard here, the engineers look at the tender. If there are any changes to be made, any specific details will be added. However, once the construction plans are set, the tender also describes how they need to get involved in the tender work. And once the contract has been awarded, the construction happens. And for the construction site, what criteria do they need to be complying with? And so payment modalities, insurances, all of that. It also describes the way we want things to be built, sewers rather, or roads. Compaction, for example, there are some terms, there are some criteria that are performance related that must be complied with in order to do quality control. Let me give you a visual example. This was when a College Street was built between Gauvin Street and Champlain Street. The tender will specify that there are concrete conduits for the sewers and the sanitary mains. So they have to have bedding in gravel. And so this is what you need to do to correctly install infrastructure. Once the infrastructure is installed, then you do the testing. Maybe not specifically on this item here that you see, but if they're putting in a water main after installation, we fill it full of water. We increase the pressure and we analyze to see if there are any leaks. If there are no leaks, then we go ahead. With sanitary mains, we put in a small camera-loaded truck and we do a video inside to see if there are any defects in the installation. So these are the elements that we find that we look for. The next document are design standards. Design standards are mostly for engineers, the engineering firms. This is a 100-page guide document which explains what the city is looking for by builders. For example, if you're looking at a storm sewer or a culvert, if we're replacing a culvert, then you have to say, well, look, if it's a big rain, what runoff is going to reach that culvert? The water system requires certain pressure to be maintained, and they're required for the sewer system. And there are also some requirements when it comes to water provided for firefighting. So sanitary mains, storm sewers, roadways, It's the geometry of the roadways. Think about the widths of the roads and thicknesses that are involved for also the bedding for gravel, even radiuses. So when there's a intersection in a street, you know, you don't need a 90-degree turn. The curve, you can't have a 90-degree curb, for example, if you need a turning radius. And what's the picture? Engineers working on plans in an office and doing calculations. Now it's mostly done by computers, but in the field, we're talking about culverts. This was installed on Melançon Road, east of Dieppe Boulevard. Before construction, a culvert, I know people like it to hear in lengths of feet. It was 5 feet in diameter. These are 7 feet in diameter, and there are 2 of them. So the engineers designed, they looked at this and say you have a 1 in 100-year rain frequency. It's an enormous amount. And in the design standards, we ask, well, what it's going to look like in 100 years, plus 20% for climate change. So the engineers came back with the documentation. So they needed 2 7-foot diameter culverts. Behind, you can see the pumping station. Same thing. All the criteria to design the pumping station were in this design standards as well. The next one is the Manual of Procedures, Stands, and Directives for Subdivisions. This guide shows you how to design and build subdivisions. With regard to subdivisions, there are, acts like the Planning Act for the province, and so they and their consultants have a guide to follow the steps required so a subdivision proposal can be accepted, and then you'll know what is required before you begin constructing or building, what happens during the construction of a subdivision, what's expected from the builders, what's expected from them, so the city accepts the subdivision, and so on. Let me give you an example of what you find in that manual. You have here what the developer consultant has to do for each lot so that lots are properly drained. So this is an example for drainage. It's a simple, so you have to have things that are far away from the building. And another thing that's registered with the province is the drainage for the whole neighborhood. And these plans are registered with the province. All this information is found in the procedures manual and the directives for building subdivisions. Other kinds of information you can find, these are called development charges. This is near Keith Boulevard. This developer at the time has installed infrastructure and is going to benefit from land in the surrounding area. The first developer invested money for the benefit of the neighborhood, so they come and take advantage of this investment. They now must contribute in a monetary fashion to the first developer. So in this document, you have the lists of areas that are affected by these development charges. Now, some of the amendments that you're going to be seeing are for new information. So last year, for example, or since last year rather, we have a new tree bylaw. So this has an effect on developers for depending on the scope of their development, the length of streets, they need to plant streets or trees, pardon me, or make a contribution. Some of the bylaws are referred to in this document or the document for developers. There's outdated information. The last standards change goes back to 2012. So some information didn't work anymore, was outdated. So the standards for subdivisions, that goes back to 2015. With regard to tenders, we had made a bigger review in 2022 because there was a new act passed by the province. This time, there aren't that many amendments to tenders. It's the other two documents really that are being changed. You'll see in your package once you get it. I think it's almost 200 pages worth of documents, just to give you a little advance warning. So most of the package deals with the subdivision guide. Many of the pages include the changes and the modifications. Maybe there's a little doubling, but it's important for you to see this document. And with this presentation, it will explain what you're going to be dealing with. The design criteria manual also has been changed, but there's one section in particular for storm sewers. We had gone to an external engineering firm for help. We said to them, propose amendments that follows what's happening in the industry and what's happening in other municipalities. So, you know, we can see what's happening in other municipalities and what the trends are, which we had done for the subdivision guide. And we are looking at what the neighboring municipalities are doing. It'll help developers too. If our approach includes what's happening in Moncton, then you have, that is to say, the consultants and the developers, you know, can turn things around more quickly if they're used to working with a city like Moncton. With regard to water distribution systems and sanitary mains, in the design guide book, we're based on a manual that is produced in Atlantic Canada for water and wastewater. They've updated their document in 2021, if I'm not mistaken, and that version goes back to 2006. So we went through that and the changes that we incorporated in that. There were not significant changes to notify you of, but some things change. So some of this information is not necessarily in the package because these are not changes which affect the documents as such. And another one, there were some terms which have changed along the way. So, and given the fact that our documents are written in English, you know, we're talking municipal service easement. So now it's called local governance easement. So these are small changes of this kind. And these small changes, they weren't all put in the package. Otherwise, it would have been much too heavy for reading. So what we're going to see in this package of documents is an example, for example, for the tenders. So the part in white is something was there, and in yellow is being added. So for tenders, we're going to be asking for help from Public Works because they're out there on the construction site and they know what the equipment is. Typically, we don't necessarily specify the kind of equipment that we want, but if they say, okay, this is what they want, we're going to put it in, and we'll put it in or approved equal to keep it more general. But that's basically what a tender does. For design standards, this is an example of the amendment of the kind we're proposing. It's for the number of valves, isolation valves, to shut down a main. We're mentioning it here. So if there's a water leak, there has to be a sufficient number of isolation valves so that you are not putting more than 30 customers out of service at any time. So it could be good, but if we're talking or thinking about Amaro, for example, that wouldn't work because there are other issues there. But the reason why we're proposing taking out this paragraph is that now we have a lot of row houses. There are so many row houses, they're all close together. And so this would increase the number of valves. And so we don't see the utility of having so many isolation valves, because typically they're all at every intersection. So that's an example of the kinds of things we're going to see in the design standards. For subdivisions, as I said, well, we're adding the estimated contribution for street tree funding because of the tree bylaw. You'll be seeing that it's a fairly hefty package of information, but it's not too significant. If there's some issues, you know, for the subdivision manual, it's one of our engineers who made the changes, and so he's an expert in the field. So I think he's been working for some 17 years in development. He's not here with me today, but if you go through the package, he'll be here next week. So if there are any questions of a specific nature, you know, I can answer some that are more general oriented, but he'll be here next week if you have any specific questions about the amendments that he's putting forward. So overall, that's what I have for today. If you have any questions, I can answer them. Questions? Councillor Genet. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for this presentation. It's very interesting. And I would say you do some cool work there. I'm wondering, because they're going to have a lot of pages to read, it's going to be fairly technical. Do we have enough time to read through it? Or are we going to get it on Thursday to have it read by Monday? I think it's going to be out Thursday. But it's going to be discussed. We talked about it too. Maybe there's not much urgency in approving it. Your Worship, if you'll allow me, it's a very technical document. So it's the highest level of expertise in some levels. You know, it's to give you added weight to all the documents that are the foundational documents for infrastructure, building roads, building other things. So all municipalities are doing this to pass all these documents. With regard to the complexity, yes, it's a heavy document. The only thing I can tell you is that we've done our work. We went to the experts in order to make sure that the norms and standards are there. What are the new trends, that they're relevant and more modern? So if you want to read the document, you're more than welcome to do so. You know, we've showed you the revisions and the changes that have been made, but I can assure you that the due diligence was done by all members of the team, and experts were retained for their help and services. I'll be reading the document. My second question is, and I found it interesting when you were talking about culverts that were adapted to climate change, you know, risk of flooding 1 in every 100 years. Is this the case everywhere? Is this a standard everywhere? You know, if there's the worst catastrophe, then the culverts are adapted to, everything's adapted to these conditions. Well, maybe not the roads are adapted to these eventualities, but I would say that, for example, in a local street, the storm sewers are not a certain diameter to, you know, it's a 1 in every 5 years. We talk a minor network, for example, for storm sewers. Otherwise, our infrastructure would be way overbuilt. However, whenever a subdivision is designed, for example, then the engineer needs to check to see if there is a storm, a 1 in a 100-year storm, then where is the runoff going to go? So if there are small ditches, or they're wide, sometimes they're hidden, you take that into account. But the culverts, yes, you know, if they go through roads, you often see that culverts that were installed in the 1970s, that wasn't the case, you know, it's more serious then. When you see roadways, for example, where the culvert gives way, you know, they're older culverts. So these things are critical to install the what we need to deal with climate change. But on streets, you're not going to see those great big culverts. These are for smaller. So you're talking about retention ponds. There are different kinds of ways of that you're dealing with these storms. Sometimes you hear about zero net. It's a term you hear often. And so if you're building a new development, for example, and if it's wooded, then the runoff happens more slowly. Once you start building in a wooded area, then the runoff, and you take down the trees, then the runoff is much quicker. So the engineer has to build then a retention pond, which captures the runoff, which is in excess of what would have come out previously before the building, because when it was wooded and in retention, it leaves quickly, typically after 3 days. If there's a huge rainstorm, then the pond will fill up, and then little by little will be released into the storm sewers down. Thank you. That's very interesting. Thank you, Councillor Le Boutillier. Thank you, Your Worship. It's concerning this document. I'm sure it's going to be highly technical, and in order to facilitate, and maybe the document's already prepared, but if it's not finalized, instead of, maybe you could tell us where the pages are, where if it's not the Atlantic standard, that we in the city of Dieppe, this is what we decided. Maybe identify those items so that we know the rest is standard to Canadian standard. Maybe that might make things a little easier, at least for me, for sure. Yes, it's a good point. And there's a document which has been prepared. It's a summary of all the changes. So when there are significant changes, there maybe some small words have changed, for example, there's a line or two which then describes what the change is and why the change was made. But yes, it's a good point. We could amend that and add it by way of information, which is specific for the city of Dieppe. Thank you. Councillor Godbout. Yes, thank you. Listen, with regard to our governance, we have to look at these documents. It's our responsibility. We have to look at them. There's a reason we present them to council for approval. And in this context, what I'm interested in the same idea that Councillor Le Boutillier had, I would say that where you have risk management, the decisions related to risk management, I would like that to be identified. And maybe we decided to follow what Moncton was doing rather than doing something else. In your evaluations, are there anything like, because there are rivers and marshes, are we at risk for certain things? We decided to do this in the standards. So where did we do this risk management so we can identify it and we can understand the risk choices we've made, because we do have a certain responsibility. So if things happen, then we're ready for them, ready to deal with them. Yes, this also makes me think that maybe there are some in these documents that won't be included in the package, but it doesn't mean that perhaps another day I could come and do a presentation on the elements like this that are specifically like that. Yes, and it's the idea that there's climate change and all kinds of other things, but what is the city of Dieppe doing that you have to manage in the standards that you're setting? So we know, and we'll see this specifically for our, yes. Never choose the quickest method. I read that document years ago, so have fun. I'm looking forward to seeing the changes. Anyone else? I think that concludes our evening. Thank you. Thank you.